Lights, Camera, Reaction, Episode 3.
Happy Halloween, everyone. I'm Grace.
I'm Kayla.
I'm a giraffe.
And today we'll be reviewing the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Spooky.
So, what was everyone's take on it?
A lot of screaming. It was very uncomfortable. There was some chainsaw in there. Definitely.
I was looking for more chainsaw, not gonna lie.
I mean, it could have used a little more Chainsaw Massacre. There's a lot of cannibalism, which I was not expecting, which was a pleasant surprise. The cannibalism.
It's very different from the original story.
It's very different from the original story,
Yeah.
but I feel like when it comes to horror movies in the 70s, you gotta have that oomph.
Yeah, you have to make it more horror.
I'm sorry, did you say cannibalism was a pleasant surprise?
Yes, I did.
Okay. So, when it comes to the chainsaw, only Franklin, the wheelchair guy, he was the one who got chainsawed. I was a little shocked by that, and I was more shocked the fact that Franklin died. Like, I thought that his character would have a little more development.
I thought, the blonde was gonna be like, the old man character at the beginning who dies as the first one to get murdered, but no, she actually lived, which was shocking.
Franklin, I mean, he was obsessing over the knife, the bloody handprint,
Yeah.
everything, and then he just gets chainsawed in his seat.
He done got dead.
Alright.
Pockets on these.
I mean, I think the most uncomfortable death, in my opinion, was the girl who got meat hooked.
Yeah,
I
that
did
was
not
very
like that.
uncomfortable to watch.
Because, who wants to get meat hooked,
And also the fact that she's
Well, what's
still
the
alive.
context?
Yeah.
And I think that would be the worst way to die if you're tortured first and then killed, because then you live through all the pain.
So when you think of horror genre, you have a certain expectation almost immediately. So how does this film exceed or not your expectations of what it means to be or watch a horror film?
It had a lot of blood. It was definitely a slasher film. I thought it was very it's very standard horror film in my opinion. Very bloody, lots of screaming, lots of running, lots of chase scenes and just macabre imagery sort of things.
I think something very interesting about horror films, which you see a lot of, is scary foreshadowing. Maybe something that happened in the past that they're seeing about, or something else where, in this film it said about a horoscope and their zodiac sign, it said oh, something bad's gonna happen, or this person's gonna have a bad day. Yeah.
Trust the zodiacs. Yeah, there was a lot of foreshadowing. There was that scene where the crazy brother left a handprint on the van. One of Frankie was like, "Oh my gosh, what if it's Mark?" And one of his friends was like, "It's the mark of Zorro. They're gonna come get us," and they did. So that was some high class foreshadowing.
What are some other elements that you can point out that made this a more cult classic?
Close-ups.
Screaming.
Close-up screaming.
Close-up screaming, yes.
There was a lot of zoom in, shake, 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 zoom out, whoa, ah. A lot of that.
A lot of rolling eyes and I'm terrified and my face is really close to the camera and I'm gonna scream a lot.
I think
a lot.
I think it was great, and I think maybe it's just my opinion, but I think it's really nice when movies are set in the 70s, and I know this was made in the 70s, 80s, but even now, if a film's set in a horror film, I think that's really good quality.
In a non-weird way.
People in the 70s.
That van, the van that they were riding in, that is the road trip van. As soon as you saw that van, you're like, man, this is gonna be a really good 80s movie, or everyone's gonna die. But that van.
What happened to the van?
What happened to the van decade? That
was my favorite character. Was the van.
It was parked in the house and they didn't come back for it. I feel like she should have, the blonde that was running away from the chainsaw person should have got in that van and like drove away.
Yeah, they had
She
a
was
car
right.
the entire time. They just
Yeah.
refused to use it. Same with like when
Well,
the
the
truck
car was
driver.
out of gas.
But you know when the truck driver stopped, they literally got out of the truck while the chainsaw guy was out of the truck. They literally got out of the truck and decided to run around the truck instead of just drive away. He literally jumped out of the truck with a tire iron. No, wait, what was it?
I have an idea.
Wrench. It was a pipe.
I have an idea why they did that, and I think that's mainly because
called
it was on a very
plot.
narrow road, and where the person was going was not towards the city, and so they would need to turn around to go towards the city, and because it's a huge truck, you couldn't turn around. That
Or they
easily.
could just drive for like a mile, then turn around later once they're far away from these killers, you know?
Or they wanted, you know, like some more plot, some spooky chasing. So it had a lot of spooky chasing.
So how does this film compare to the last two horror films that we've seen?
It was definitely more of a kind of classic slasher, lots of blood, lots of screaming, like with Silence of the Lambs and The Orphanage. Those were both very psychological and didn't really even feel like horror. They were very tense and stressful, at least for me, but they weren't super duper heavy on the screaming and the running and the blood and all that jazz. And this movie really was. That's kind of the main focus of the movie was
Blood.
blood and screaming. Lots.
Blood and
lots,
meat.
and
There's a
lots
lot of
screaming.
cannibalism.
Definitely more of a shock factor. They're definitely going for like visual shock factor rather than like the plot shock factor that the previous two movies we've watched had.
You can see a lot of that when they were just discovering the bone room for the first time.
Yeah, the bone room.
Because they spent like a good minute just like going around the bone room and like looking at every little
And
different
screaming.
detail and screaming the entire time. She must have had her throat hurt after that. But there was just a minute of them like going through like every grotesque, messed up bone pyramid,
There was the bone
sculpture, bone
Many,
chair.
many bone chairs. There were lots of bone
It was like a
chairs.
skin sofa.
They had a skin sofa.
I think they did the bone chairs. It's like a throne to them, you know. Like you know how like
and then there was
hunters.
Grandpa kind of freaked me out. We thought
Grandpa was
Grandpa
basically a
dead.
mannequin. Yeah.
We thought Grandpa was dead,
And he
and then
started
they like
sucking on some finger.
cut Sally's finger and like put it in his mouth, and he started like sucking on it. We were like, ugh. So that was a shock factor. So you're like, wait a minute, he's supposed to be dead.
And then the whole time they were trying to get Grandpa to hit him with the hammer.
Grandpa keeps dropping the hammer.
That was literally that's probably the funniest
That
element.
was kind of funny.
There's
Like
a
you're in
lot
the middle
of
of this horrifying like ordeal, and then just Grandpa just cannot hold that hammer.
because
They're like,
Grandpa's
Grandpa's the
basically
best.
dead at this
Yeah.
point.
But he can't hold the hammer.
He sucks blood and just stares at things. That's what Grandpa
He's
does.
basically a corpse.
And one of those was pretty brutal. Like you saw like the blood seep out. You're like, ugh. Sent like shivers down your spine because nobody wants to get hit in the head by a blunt object. Just you can. It's just like too sensory. You know, you can kind of like imagine that for yourself. The cold, hard iron pressed against your skull.
And I think they relied a lot on that for people to be like empathizing, like, oh, that would hurt. It's like the meat hook thing where they lifted her onto the meat hook, and that just makes you want to go, ugh. And getting hit in the head with a hammer, like, who wants to get hit in the head with a hammer? And she's just like dripping with blood. It's just.
There was also a lot of horrible running and screaming.
Yeah.
She was like, they didn't know where she went, and then she screamed, and they found her again.
Like she just kept screaming. We're like, if you would just shut up,
basically
you would
like,
not
"Go
be
over this
able to
way,
fight.
come
It's
on."
dark.
I think
It's
that's
dark.
something about this.
And you're in the brush. If you would stop screaming, you might get away.
Yeah, there's a lot of things about this film where like they were just not being smart, and
I mean, they have to have a plot.
yeah, and you have to think about if you were in this situation, you know, how would you react to something? Or
I
like
wouldn't scream.
because you know you're not being murdered every single day. Like that's not something that just happens.
So if you notice, there's not a lot of female characters in this film. Most of them are actually male. How does that become significant
It was the 80s.
towards the end of the film, the female in the end?
I don't exactly know the social struggle back then, but it might have something to do with that. Anybody want to pick that up?
I think definitely.
Everyone thinks a dumb blonde would be the first one to
Yeah,
go, and so it's
she
like
was
kind of
blonde, and she
was a girl.
like, yeah.
That made
Normally in horror movies, like the classic trope is blonde's the first one to die, or like the second. She's gonna die, but in this movie, yes.
Rule.
And I felt like with the being a woman and having all these really creepy men around, like at one point I was like, oh my god, she's gonna get raped. And I felt like that was part of like the horror of it, was like you don't know what's gonna happen to her.
And then they said go get grandpa, and then you really
You're
got
like,
nervous.
Yeah,
when he was bringing out, like when she was hiding in the gas station, and this guy, who we eventually learned was like the father of the cannibal family, was like, okay, I'm gonna go get the truck and we're gonna get you out of here. And then he comes back and he has rope in a burlap sack, and you're like,
I mean, you should have been worried because like they looked over at the fire pit and there was literally like a
sausages and
there was a foot roasting on the fire.
yeah, but that's like the suspense, you know? Like you don't
At that moment, you should know to leave.
Yeah, but
or, like,
you're
find
cannibal.
a-
sometimes you're in
morals aren't
such a state
exactly
of
very
shock
high.
that you can't move.
I mean, yeah. Also, the fact that he hit her with the broom.
The broom, you just said a broom.
Instead of like getting something like hard and sturdy, he like tried to like knock her out with like the
And
the
she like
soft part of
did.
the broom.
Like it was like trying to like get a cat out of the house, like a stray cat. It wasn't like, it was stupid.
And he just started laughing. He was like driving and poking her with the broom, be like,
And then he got like, but at the dinner, he got all like sentimental about it. He was like, oh, I don't like to see them suffer, you know, as he's like poking her with the broom in the car.
I mean, that's not really suffering. If someone poked me with a broom.
That's tormenting.
that's tormenting. You're like, oh no.
But he's like, this is gonna be a clean death, it's gonna be a quick death, and then the grandpa over there hitting her, really socking the head with a hammer over and over again.
So like, come on, grandpa. And he's just
You got it, grandpa.
How is the ending scene significant to the film?
I
That
don't
whole last
shock, half like, I got away, you bastard.
Relief.
Yeah. Like, look at me, I'm the one that got away.
Or she can laugh at all the stupid stuff that happened to her now that she's out of danger.
And you have to think all her friends are dead now.
Yeah. I mean, Franklin was kind of annoying, not gonna lie.
Wasn't like,
Were we that mad about it?
But he was her brother.
yeah.
I mean, yeah. But Franklin was really creepy, not gonna lie. I don't know, the ending, it wasn't as satisfactory as I'd like it to be. I thought like you would have like seen like the family like get arrested or killed, but instead like they just like the final scene is literally him just spinning around with like a chainsaw.
So what are your thoughts overall in the film?
I think that it was very much a cult classic. Like, I can see why it has such a big following as a horror movie. I personally thought it was very uncomfortable just because of all the close-ups and the eye rolling and the screaming and all the, you know, like very physical sort of,
You know, well,
just like hitting people with hammers and putting people on me. I cannot get over the meat hook scene. Like, that just,
you see it, and there are some scenes where it does look fake. It does look scripted. And I think, you know, there are a lot of scenes like that, and it's like, okay, you can do better on that, but you gotta think, this was written a long time ago, and back then that was probably like the most scariest thing ever seen. And I mean, I wasn't too freaked out by it, but it was definitely interesting.
and I mean, kids these days are so, like, not to be like a boomer or anything, but like kids these days are very overstimulated, and like horror movies aren't that scary to kids these days.
Well, it was a good movie overall. We enjoyed it.
Yeah.
It was a little uncomfortable in some places, but overall, I mean, I don't know, I was expecting a little more, but I still liked it.
It's great. Yeah.
Well, thank you for watching. This has been Lights, Camera, Reaction, and again,
Everybody
happy
say
Halloween.
Colorado.
Everybody say Colorado. I'm a Bye.